you so much, first of all, Taylor and Lawrence, to be joining us and to share your time and your knowledge. It's really, really very much appreciated. I wanted to give a quick intro of you two. You are the co-founders of Ambient, which is an AI assistant for the Office of the CEO, meaning all things strategy and operation, including chief of staffs. Um, so I'll let you take it away. I just wanted to introduce you.
Great. And Diego, I think you and I have met at Chief of Staff events here in San Francisco. So it's
We did.
good to be connected again. And thank you so much to Clara and Ask a Chief of Staff, who's been wonderful. Clara's an advisor of mine personally. So as I've tried to get really close to the Chief of Staff role over the last 12 months, she's been an amazing partner. And for those of you that are not participating in her incredible community, you should absolutely do that. Okay, I'd like to also quickly introduce my co-founder, Taylor, and he's going to be leading us through a couple of demos today of tools that we think are interesting and that illustrate some of the key concepts that everyone should have in mind for 2025. So let me kick this off. I mean, I was saying in the opening comments that the pace of change in the landscape of AI right now is absolutely overwhelming, and it's going to hit all facets of our lives. It's going to hit our professional life. It's changing the way parents think about how to teach their kids of the skills they're needed for the next chapter. So we are at a tremendous moment of acceleration, and it is extremely difficult to keep up with what's happening. So what we're going to try and do today, we're going to try and condense everything that you may have seen in the news over the last couple of months down to a couple of key trends and a couple of kind of skills that we think every chief of staff should develop. But I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to do a little SNL style cold open 2024 versus 2025. Let's get started. So let's start with the foundation models. 2024 was about OpenAI. Yes, there were early adopters playing with Claude, playing with Llama, but OpenAI, Sam Altman, it took all the oxygen out of the room. It was the clear leader in terms of performance. Flash forward to 2025, and there are 6 credible frontier foundation models, and that number is growing. And oh yeah, do not forget about DeepSeek. You may have read about DeepSeek a couple of weeks ago. If you were an NVIDIA stockholder, you might have seen $600 billion in market cap evaporate overnight because DeepSeek announced a new credible frontier foundation model on supposedly a $6 million spend. I'm going to spend a little more time on DeepSeek in a second, but the big concept here is that any company with resources, with engineering talent, can build these foundation models. The tech is the cost for this tech is falling to the floor, and we are entering the age of the application innovation. Okay, modality. AI started long before 2022 when OpenAI announced ChatGPT, but what they did, which was really smart, is they made this foundation tech available via a very simple text-based interface. Flash forward to 2025, and the foundation models can see, they can hear, they can speak with intonation, they can speak with pauses, they can sound like humans, they can create images, they can create video, they can create text. What does that sound like? Well, it sounds like a lot like us, right? These are entities that can now interact with humans, with each other in ways that are very human-like. Now, the next big block is in how the foundation models process information. So 2024 was almost like a parlor trick. Like you'd ask a question and you get a quick response, and we like to describe it as sort of quick, truthy answers. 2025 is about slower, reasoned answers. And so what's happening? The way the foundation models are processing information is changing. They're using something called sort of chain of thought, multi-stage prompting to assess the queries and assess the prompts. It's chunking it up into various steps. It used to be that expert prompters could coax the models to have more reasoned approach using very sophisticated prompting techniques. Now that is built under the hood. So much of the performance gains in 2024 was coming from just jamming more training data into these models. Now it's coming from the actual approach to processing this information under the bucket of reasoning. So this is a big, big word. Now let's talk a little bit about agents. When I gave this talk in 2024, the AI conversation was very much about tasks. How can you use AI to draft an email, to draft an agenda? Flash forward to 2025, and we're now talking about teammates. We're talking about agentic behavior where you can point AI at a goal. We're going to show you an early version of Operator, which is OpenAI's version of an agent. And we're going to show you how it operates a little bit different than sort of just ChatGPT does. Now, let's talk about behaviors. And this might be the biggest thing as a chief of staff to think about how to overcome. If 2024 was about getting comfortable with AI, 2025 is about leaning in. As the power and capabilities of these foundation models go to the moon, the stakes for sitting out get higher. And so this is something that should be on every chief of staff mind, is like, how do we mobilize a company that may not be in a cutting edge industry to lean into this technology? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about ROI, where again, flashing back to the talk I gave a year ago, what I challenged everybody on the call to do is to see if you can find an AI tool that would allow you to save 5 hours per week. Very simple kind of ROI calculation, right? If my salary is X, I save 5 hours per week. There's sort of an implicit return on investment based on that. Taylor and I just had a fascinating conversation with the head of AI collaboration for a large enterprise company that you all have probably heard of. And what she proactively told us was that if your ROI in 2025 is time savings, you are not getting through IT. The bar has been raised. And as I think about how to think about ROI for the office of the CEO, for chiefs of staff, for CEOs, it's really about connecting the dots, making better decisions, surfacing the right information at the right time. So I think the days of like, let's see if you can just find a couple hours a week in time savings, I think it's over. I think you have to think bigger. Okay, so let me quickly summarize some of these big changes. So we went from 1 frontier model to 6. We are now moving from text to multimodality. We're moving from quick, truthy answers to slow AI and reasoning. We're moving from task-based AI to teammates. We're moving from, oh, I'm a little nervous about recording this thing or documenting this thing, to, man, if you are not unleashing AI on your business data, you are falling behind. And we're moving towards rising expectations in the world of ROI. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling here. I've got one bonus trend that I don't really know what the action is on this. So I have a younger brother who's the in-house counsel at a Blackstone-owned data center company. And the pace of growth in that category is kind of like nothing the world has ever seen. The Washington Post has come out and said that data centers will consume 17% of all energy by 2030. Like this is an insane statistic, and I don't know what to do with it, but just be aware that this technology is thirsty for energy, and it's probably going to change the way societies think about energy production. Okay, I want to double click quickly on DeepSeek, because this was a kind of a jarring moment in Silicon Valley a couple of weeks ago. You wake up and all the tech stocks had crashed, and it crashed because of one Chinese startup called DeepSeek. Taylor and I got on the phone with our CTO, our third co-founder, Brandon, to talk about like kind of what this meant for the industry. And it really came down to this. The feeling was that DeepSeek had found a way to train its foundation model on the fraction of the resources that the other primarily North American foundation models had been doing so. And it had to do with a new method they were using that didn't involve like needing access to massive amounts of training data. Now, as the weeks went on, it turns out that this may not have been exactly true. Yes, they have innovated in how to drive performance out of their model, but they also open source their tactics. So they're sharing their tactics with the world. So since this happened, NVIDIA has gained back about half of their lost market share. So my sense is that the big takeaway from DeepSeek is that this foundation, the power of the foundation models is becoming commoditized. We knew this already. We believe that this tech is going to be available like electricity to anybody. And so the innovation layer, where the innovation is happening, if you talk to any investor in Silicon Valley 12 months ago, they were trying to get in on the Perplexity deal, on the OpenAI funding deal. Now, where the action is that the applications, we believe 1,000 apps will bloom on the back of this sort of low-cost, powerful technology. Okay, let me summarize a couple of the implications for the folks on the line. So the first one is that point I just made. So the cost of the foundation models is plummeting. We have 150 customers at Ambient. Our OpenAI bill is under $1,000 a month. So we've seen a 1,000-fold decrease in 12 months in the cost of these foundation models. So the cost, the worry was there was going to be one or two monopolies here. It's just not the case. We believe we're in the chapter of 1,000 apps blooming. While the risks remain, as AI becomes more powerful and self-guided, the downside of sitting out is becoming more catastrophic. So that the stakes are rising. I saw someone compare AI to this newly discovered nation of super hardworking, super smart workers that want to come and work for near free for your company. What is the cost of not hiring an intern over the summer? It's probably not too bad. What is the cost of not bringing in a team of high-powered consultants that want to work for free for you? It might be more impactful. So we believe the stakes are rising as the tech gets more powerful. We also believe more workflows are in play. We're going to talk through some of the workflows within the office of the CEO that we think are being ripe, that are ripe for reinvention at the hands of AI. And then the last one is that behavioral obstacles that you all are probably facing within your C-suite to deploy AI at scale, they may be dissipating. I saw a stat from Gartner that 25% of all meetings will have an AI assistant on them by the end of 2025. This was not the case in 2024. You got connected with the wrong person on the line and you were recording using your AI assistant and they would be freaked out. I think many of you will agree that behaviors are changing here. All right, I'm gonna kind of like drop a random thought in here, and this came from there's a woman who runs the remote work program at Atlassian, which is one of the true success stories of remote work. And she made the case that there's been this constant debate about whether in-office or remote work is better. And during the pandemic, it almost felt like there was a remote work revolution coming, and that these companies would have access to more talent and they would be able to retain their employees more than the ones that were truly remote. And then, at least here in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, there was a hard move to return to office. What's interesting to me is that the companies best equipped to unleash AI to really make meaningful differences in their productivity and their execution are the ones that document everything, that capture everything, that instrument everything. And so this is a blog post that I want to write, is the pendulum going to swing, kind of swing back to remote work companies in the age of AI because of the expertise in documenting and recording and doing meetings on Zoom. Okay, let's move this over to workflows. And we're going to start with a quote from the CEO of Microsoft talking about the workflows of the CEO. And Taylor, maybe you can give me a thumbs up if the audio is coming through.
I would say the workflow of the prep of the CEO office has not changed since 1990. I prep for a customer meeting where I literally go into Copilot and I say, tell me everything I need to know about the customer. It tells me everything from my CRM, my emails, my Teams meetings, and the web, right? It grounds it. I put it into Pages, share it with my account team in real time. So just imagine the hierarchy, this entire thing of, oh, let me prepare a brief for the CEO goes away. It's just a query away. I generate a query, share a page if they want to annotate it. So I'm reasoning with AI and collaborating with my colleagues, right? That's the new workflow.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a second, because I think it's something that's relevant probably to most of the chiefs of staff in the room. If we were in a auditorium, I would say, I want to see a show of hands, anybody who's had to prep their principal for a big customer meeting. Well, this is what Satya is talking about. There's a hand. Thank you for that. I see lots of hands going up. And so this is what Satya is talking about, whereas opposed to sending his team on a kind of a mad race to pull together every piece of background information about a customer, he's simply asking Copilot, and Copilot is looking across CRM, it's looking across meeting recordings, it's looking at every interaction over email, and it's pulling together a dossier in minutes for Satya for a big customer meeting. And so this is a workflow that is super interesting, and we actually think that this concept is the single biggest idea in B2B AI. We call it chat with your documents, which is a terribly unsexy way to describe something that is really radical. But how do you take the power of a ChatGPT-like interface and apply it to the private business data within your company and be able to compile it in a way where the right data matches the right project? In this case, Satya doesn't want to talk to all the business data within Microsoft. He just wants to talk to the data associated with a particular important account. So this is the idea. This is the big idea. Chat with your documents. How can you assemble the right data in a secure way and unleash the AI to help you drive better execution, to help you make better decisions, to help you do all the things that the Office of the CEO cares about? And as we think about what is the Chiefs of Staff role in enabling chat with your documents, so Satya has a very particular view of the future, which is if you use Microsoft products, they have a product that does everything, and they have data related to every workflow within the company. That is one view of the world. Most companies are not like that. Most companies are not only using Microsoft products. And so we think the skills come down to sort of three things for the Chief of Staff. The first thing is enabling instrumentation. What do I mean by instrumentation? I mean securely giving AI access to the data that can inform it to help you execute better. This is part social engineering. This is part convincing your CEO, convincing your executives to allow to lean into this, to try and expose, and it's scary. We'll talk about some of the risks in a second. The second key skill, and I believe this is a skill that's never going to disappear, is to kind of dust off your prompting skills. As the models have changed, the most effective tactics and techniques for prompting have changed as well. I'm going to give you one example in a second that you all will get to take home with you of what a style of prompt that works with the modern reasoning models looks like. It's a little bit different than the prompts we were using in 2024. And then the last skill set, again, it sounds terribly unsexy, which is this idea of a librarian. But the idea of someone who can assemble the right data in a secure way to map the right business context for the AI in a way that maps to the strategic initiatives of the company. So the example that Satya was using is like mapping all of the data that related to a particular account, but you can imagine the data associated with a particular project, with a particular offsite, with opening a new office. All of these projects have their underlying data that if you can package that together, it will enable the AI to help you do your job. And so these themes, we're gonna touch on these when we get to the demos, but I think this is the big idea: chat with your documents and think about the pockets of business data that are dark within your company and how you can bring those into the light. Okay, I mentioned how the best practices around prompting are changing. This was a prompt format that was put out by a guy named Ben Hilek that was endorsed by OpenAI as the right way to prompt the new sort of reasoning models. And so it starts with a goal. So you're giving the context of what you're trying to accomplish. You're being specific about the format that you want the response. And like we've started to bake this into all the ambient prompts. So I need a one-page bulleted summary fit for a board of directors. So be very explicit about who the audience is and what the format. I need a CSV table with each of the dates and each of the project owners. So get used to working that into your prompts. Give some warnings like, don't hallucinate. Like, make sure not to imagine things. Like, sometimes you have to be a little explicit, and then you spend the bulk of your prompt dumping in as much context as you possibly can. And this could be writing styles, this could be agenda formats, this could be a job rec, it could be any sort of context to ground the AI. So we'll share this deck with everyone, but just be aware, as the models drift and change, the tactics for extracting knowledge out of these models has to change too. Okay, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the risks associated with this concept of chat with your documents. And so let me start going through them. The first one is hallucination. And for those of you that have been going deep on kind of using AI for work, you have probably seen the AI go off and make stuff up if it didn't have a clear answer. And so this is something, so the risk for Satya would be, he's got this big customer meeting, Copilot goes off and it comes up with this very compelling, well-written brief that is just not real. It has nothing, it's making up source calls. There are some best practices emerging on the vendor side, which is to use one model to reality check a second model. So Llama is a open source model that companies are using to cross-check the work of Perplexity or to cross-check the work of OpenAI. So there's different best practices from a vendor perspective. I generally feel that the world is heading the right way on this. As the foundation models improve, as there's more reasoning first foundation models, that the risk of hallucination will go down, but you have to, it still needs to be cross-checked, particularly if it's mission critical work that the AI is doing for you. The second big risk here is that the wrong person gets access. So what Satya is describing, he's describing God mode, right? He's describing the ability to look across everything in his company, every call, every email, every note, every customer record, and pull together a briefing document. Well, that is incredibly powerful. For those of you that watch the Uber movie, like, you'll know that they also built God mode, the ability to see any ride on their network happening at any time. And that didn't turn out well. The wrong people got access. They apparently abused it. They were tracking reporters that were critical of Uber. So all these kinds of things, if you build unlimited access software tools, you have to think about the permissions and controls. And Ambient is working on this kind of stuff. It gets very tricky in a hurry in terms of who gets to see what. So just be aware that the more access, you have to think equally hard about access controls. The third big block, and this is one that we saw a lot in 2024, which is the general counsel saying, look, we cannot record our calls because somebody is going to say something idiotic that will be used in discovery in a lawsuit 3 years from now. And this is a classic category of risk of recording things that didn't used to get recorded. And this is one of those things. I mean, there's features that can protect you. There's data redaction services for this kinds of thing. But the more data that you memorialize, the higher the risk of something bad, particularly in a society like the United States that has a lot of lawsuits, happen. So something to be aware of. And then the last category of risk here is, I actually think, nothing new, right? It's like hackers, data breach. I think anytime you have cloud computing, there is risk for the wrong people being able to penetrate and get access. The good news is the industry has come up with ways to help reduce the risk here, things like SOC 2 compliance and HIPAA and these sorts of things. So the industry knows how to handle this particular category of risk, in my opinion. So the big point here is that for AI to help you steer the ship, it must have access, and this carries risk. Okay, we're heading towards the demo soon. I want to kind of quickly point out and lay out some of the workflows within the office of the CEO that we think are in play for AI in 2025. And so the first one is something that we call rhythm of business. A lot of you probably use this language. This is the operating cadence of meetings that drive the way your company operates. So staff meetings, all hands, offsites, board meetings. I suspect many of the folks on this call are already using AI to do things like prepare for a meeting, to do things like take notes at your meeting, to do things like write the follow-ups, draft follow-up emails. If you are not doing those things, I suspect you are behind. I suspect your meeting hygiene at your company is underperforming what your competitors are doing. I think this is table stakes kinds of AI stuff in 2025. The second category of workflows is the sort of the special project. The chief of staff is the queen or the king of the special project. We know this. These projects tend to not be Asana kinds of projects. These tend to be high stakes. They tend to be highly confidential. They tend to be under-resourced because if they were resourced properly, they would live with a VP and not only with the chief of staff. And so these things tend to be like financings and mergers and big partnerships and opening the new office in the new geographic area. So we think there's room for a special kind of software for this. And we're going to give you some examples with a tool called Notebook LM, which is a way to think about project-based work. The third workflow that we think is in place is in the category of briefings and insights. And this is something that my chief of staff used to do for me at my last company, which is kind of help get me ready for the 10 call day meeting, for the crucial face-to-face with a customer, with alert me to things that are happening in the sales org and the engineering org that I should know about. This is like, what are the 5 big things that I should know every week? We think AI is going to be able to help with that. In fact, at Ambient, we're shipping a feature right now. It's literally called the 5 big things. The CEO of NVIDIA does this manually. He asks employees to send them the 5 biggest things on their mind on an ongoing basis. We think AI can look across the business and surface these kinds of things and be your eyes and ears on the ground, help you get ready for a busy day, these sorts of things. The next category that we're hearing a lot, that a lot of chiefs of staff spend a lot of time on is strategic recruiting. So this is recruiting that first CRO, recruiting the CMO, recruiting the VP of engineering. And there's some wonderful use cases with AI where you can customize a prompt by uploading the job rec, your company values, running your interview, and then using AI as a second set of eyes to evaluate the candidate. Of course, not making decisions on the candidate, but helping you be very methodical about how to evaluate candidates. This is really cool stuff. I think this is an area to watch. And then the last category, which we think is the crown jewel for the office of the CEO, is the strategic planning process, strategic planning workflow. I'm going to turn it over to Taylor to kind of talk a little bit about kind of what we think is changing for strategic planning, strategic execution. So Taylor, over to you.
Nice. So 2024, as we think about building up to this process, which is usually a once a year process, it's incredibly laborious, time consuming to put together the story, to poll your team members, customers, generate insights, draft debate topics, ultimately to get leaders to make decisions on where are we going next, how we performed to date, how's that going to change the way we think about the future. And this is a really expensive but critical process to run. Now, as we think about what strategic planning looks like with AI involved, if you can click through the next one, Lawrence, many of these key workflows are going to have acceleration to them. And we truly believe the strategic planning process, the biggest unlock is to not wait once a year to run that process, but to run it every month, every week. It's something you can recurringly check in on. And the way you get there is by speeding up the manual workflows that go into it. So I think the big theme that we see with AI is acceleration. It's speeding up what happens for decision-making and for leadership to be able to have true insights on an almost real-time basis. An example is like the one Lawrence just mentioned, the top 5 things. What happens when you start to increase this information flow looking across the business in a way that no human could possibly do, certainly not you with so much on your plates. So this is the big trend we're seeing, and this is what we're pushing for ourselves with Ambient.
Awesome. So let's move on to a couple of demos that illustrate some of these points. And so I'm going to turn it over to Taylor in a second. We're going to walk through 3 tools. The first is a tool that was developed by Google called Notebook LM, which I believe is the purest example of chat with your documents. And I think it'll resonate with a lot of you. The second tool is Operator, which I think illustrates the point of this like teammates, not tasks, agentic behavior, outcomes, not time savings. And then the third tool we're going to show you is Ambient, and some of the work we're doing around special projects to make it easier to map to the workflows of the Office of the CEO. All right. And so let me turn this back over to Taylor to walk through the demo.
So thanks, Lawrence. So the first product I'm going to showcase is Notebook LM. And thinking about the concept of chat with your documents, this is what the tool looks like. The idea with Notebook LM is you add your sources. And in this case, my project that I'm building out is we're opening up a fictitious Arizona office. And so I need to do some research. I want to find out, what should I consider? What are the key decision points we need to make to consider going into this new market? And so I've got an example resource here. It's a website. Now, you'll notice there are a lot of ways to bring context into Notebook LM. You can link Google Docs, slides, web pages, YouTube videos, and any open text. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in, and you'll see the left-hand side, my sources are starting to update. Now, what this does is this gives me a grounded, we call it a grounded LLM experience, a grounded chat with your documents experience, specifically with resources that I've chosen. If you use Perplexity or you use the new search tool, the web search tool from OpenAI, you'll see that it is going to go look across the internet, pull sources for you. You don't really have control over what those sources are. Now, this is an example of doing some outside research. You can imagine manually uploading internal documents as well. The challenge here is always going to be about compliance and how comfortable you feel about sharing your information with Google. This is a Google product. So I can go in here and say, what are the top 5 things we should consider with our move to Arizona? And it's going to look across the sources that I've given it. And you'll notice some other interesting elements here. It's going to produce a response. It's going to heavily annotate footnotes to what it's producing. I think this is a really important element for products that are doing research, is to always give you footnotes on the sources that it's considering when generating outputs. And there's some nice kind of saved pre-built prompts here. You can have it generate a briefing doc, do an FAQ. So lots of different use cases for this tool. We like to play with it a lot. Now I'm going to move on to one that I'm most interested in. It's called Operator, and this is a new product from OpenAI. Operator is accessible on their Pro plan, so not the $20 a month plan, but the $200 a month plan. And you get access to some other tools, but this is a full-on product. It's its own domain. It's its own kind of use case of multiple models within OpenAI's sphere of reasoning models, as well as traditional LLMs. Now, following the same theme about opening an office in Arizona, I'm giving it some context about the type of office space we need, some qualities around where we would like it to be, some insight into budget constraints, and then I'm asking it to identify reputable commercial real estate brokers to assist us in this process. So when I hit run on Operator, it's not only going to start to analyze what I'm asking it to do, but it's going to open up a browser. And this is the kind of big step off point that we're seeing when you kind of consider the word agent. What does an agent look like? An AI agent look like? This feels like it. It's going out there, it's starting to do work on its own, thinking about my request. And you can see over here, it's starting to display what it's doing, how it's considering the prompt I gave it. And it's starting to actually go out and do research. It's opening pages, it's clicking on links. And what's happening behind the scenes is OpenAI is combining many of these functionalities that Lawrence pointed out in 2025. It's reasoning about my prompt. It's creating an instruction set. It's opening a browser. It's looking at what's on the screen. It's assessing what it sees. It's making decisions without asking me. And it's going to continue to work through this process. And these can typically run, these types of operator runs can typically run many minutes, 30 minutes plus. I've had a couple that go that far. Some other interesting demos you might see online are asking it to go shopping for you, asking it to go look for groceries, things like that. And it will actually go through, fill out your basket, and then at some point it'll ask you to put in your credit card. Now that is one line that I'm not quite comfortable with yet, giving my payment information, let alone my login information to OpenAI to run it through this model. But you can see where the directional arrow of progress is heading. The more access you give these tools, not only to the data, but also to your credentials, the more things it can do for you. And thinking about how might you or we unleash this capability in our own business, it's going to need access. It's going to need access, passwords, logins to be able to go complete tasks. But this is when this came out, I think I posted a Slack message to my team, just incredibly excited, and the mind kind of gets boggled with thinking through how might this actually play a role in our product today, but also just society writ large. You can ask these tools to now go do increasingly complex tasks. And it's only been, what, 2 years since ChatGPT made its public debut. So that's the excitement, but also definitely a little terrifying. So it's going to keep running. We're going to switch into the last demo while it's running, and we'll come back and check on the progress. So the last demo, this is Ambient. And I wanted to think through or showcase the strategic recruiting use case. I think this is one that you all are typically involved with, if not directly involved with in leading. And I'm going to show you an example. We're not actually hiring for a VP of customer success just yet, but I'm going to show you some example data of what it might look like to run this process directly inside of Ambient, using this concept of chat with your documents, but in the way that we've implemented it. And so I've got some notes here on a conversation I had with a fictitious candidate named Grant. I'm going to open up AI chat and I'll show you the kind of prompting that we like to build. And Lawrence showed you some example formatting, and I'm happy to share this one afterwards as well. But you can see I'm giving it a context and task, and I want Ambient to start to assess the conversation I had with this candidate and to generate a one-pager based on their background, key insights from the conversation. This is something I would share with the hiring team. And this type of process would normally take me writing manual notes after the meeting is done, processing the conversation, processing my notes into something that is easy to digest and share. But with Ambient, you can create these custom prompts, save them. So I have this VP role prompt, and this prompt is actually built using a job description. It was informed by the kind of questions that I would like to ask. And when I run it, it's going to take all that context into account when it's going to review the conversation. And it's going to now output a nice readable digest about Grant and the conversation we had, their professional background. And these are the things that I wanted it to look for, especially given the role of customer success. You want to focus on different role specific insights. Now, this is a nice example of going direct to the individual artifact or the meeting. I'm going to open up projects, and similar to Notebook LM, what I just did is I added this summary into our VP of Customer Success project. And so I'm building out the sources. There's 3 conversations in here. When I come back to that chat experience, rather than asking it to give me an individual review based on the 3 candidates we've met, who is the strongest fit and why? Now I'm starting to ask Ambient to give me some ideas and insights around the kind of people we're meeting. So it's looking across all the sources in this particular project, in this case, 3 conversations with different characters here. And it's giving me a nice readout of each. And based on its assessment of strongest fit, it's going to make some recommendations. Now, I'm not going to take this recommendation and say, this is the decision we make, but this is now almost like an instantaneous 24/7 thought partner to help me think through what we're considering for this very high level role. And so there's a lot of moments. I think one big takeaway for me with these kinds of demos is there are a lot of moments throughout our day when you're talking to people, you're gathering context, you're trying to get to decisions, and you're trying to bring other people along for that ride as well. And this technology, again, is accelerating that pathway from initial conversation, initial interaction to getting to a decision.
Awesome. Thanks, Taylor. And just to kind of put a bow in that, is I think back to the skills that we recommended that you all kind of develop in 2025. The first one is instrumentation, right? So in that recruiting example, if the AI can't see the call that you've had with a candidate, or more likely the calls, it can't help you, right? It has to have access. You have to record that call. So it's a non-starter. If you want the AI to help, it has to have access. The second skill, this idea of librarian, right? Like the thought is like somebody needs to map the recording histories, the emails with the candidate into the project of the customer success search, somebody needs to do that work. Eventually, it will be an AI agent that serves as a librarian. But in the meantime, someone has to organize the data to unleash the AI. And I think that's probably you. I think it's the chief of staff. And then the third skill, Taylor showed you some monster prompts that are under the hood that he wrote to generate the best analysis for recruiting, for opening a new office. Like these are it's a skill. It's a skill like programming. You have to learn how to do it. The good thing is it's in your native language, and you should be able to learn how to do it. So there's a skill set around prompting and extracting what the AI knows. There's a skill set around organizing the data. There's a skill set around getting your company comfortable enough to give the AI access. And these are hard human problems to kind of be able to pull off those three things. And like, guess what? I have a lot of faith in the chief of staff to be able to do that. Okay, so that was Notebook LM. Again, I would be careful about uploading confidential business data into Notebook LM, where Notebook LM can be incredibly helpful for you today. I'll give you one kind of personal example, and this is way off topic, but my mother is going through some health issues right now, and my family is constantly asking me for updates, and it's very complicated stuff. I created a Notebook LM called My Mom's Health, and I upload her blood reports. I upload diagnoses. I'll upload papers about her condition. And it becomes a help desk for my family to answer questions in a way more credible way than me. And guess what? I can actually make a podcast, private podcast, where AI personalities discuss my mom's health condition. And it's kind of been magical for my family. So I would think about Notebook LM as sort of like, use it as a consumer tool. I would worry, maybe you can use it for planning the offsite, for planning kind of like a lunch meeting or something. But I would hesitate to put your business data in there. Operator is the one to keep an eye on for this year. Like by the end of the year, I fully expect you be able to say like, I need an offsite set up in Mexico City, book a hotel, book 5 activities for the week, and make sure we have 3 hours of free time, and generate me an agenda and send it out to my team. I think you will be able to go to that level with Operator or something like it, where things like the lots of moving pieces, but you have this goal to create a compelling offsite. You point the thing at the goal, you tell it where you want it to be, and it just goes and does it all. I think we'll be there by the end of 2025. And I think with the stuff that Ambient was showing you, I think the big unlock here is the ability to customize your prompts to match the workflows. So whatever your workflows are, I suspect Ambient can fit into those in a secure way. All right, let me wrap this up. And so I kind of ended, it's funny, I was going back to the presentation we gave a year ago for Clara, and I kind of ended it the same way, which is like, chiefs of staff, this is your moment. As I look around the organization, I just don't see anybody else who can get a company ready for this moment. Maybe the CEO, and you certainly need the support of the CEO, but someone has to turn the knobs and dials and drive the education and drive the change management and explain what instrumentation is and explain what agents are and explain why DeepSeek is important, but not the thing that matters right now. Someone needs to be the subject matter expert, and I think it's you. I think it's your time to mobilize your organization. I think we've mentioned that the stakes are getting higher. If you have all these superpowered agents that want to come work for you, and you just choose not to because you can't get over some obstacle, some old school VP that isn't comfortable, man, I think that poses a competitive risk to your company. So I think this is your moment. And I like to end like this, which is don't be scared. I wrote this article. I think some people should be scared. I think many people's jobs will be impacted by AI. But I believe the chief of staff is well suited to be the last woman, last man standing in the age of AI. And why do I believe that? Is because your role was built to flex up. Like your role was to take the bottom half of my list of stuff. I'm the CEO. I've got too much stuff. I need someone who works as an extension of me. So if AI takes away rhythm of business responsibilities and booking the hotels for the offsite and planning the agenda for the town hall, like you're just going to move up the chain and you're going to work on the financing. You're going to work on the M&A. You're going to work on the thought partner stuff with the CEO to help wade through thorny decisions. So I don't worry about you all. I think lean in, you will flex up, but this is a no ego role that prioritizes the well-being of the CEO and the well-being of the company above themselves. I think this is a great opportunity to do that. And I'm going to end with kind of two offers for the folks on the line. So the first one is like, Taylor and I would love to personally onboard you into Ambient and help you customize a prompt or two to save some time, but more importantly, to help you get to better decisions using custom prompts within Ambient in a secure way. So that's the first offer to you, is like, spend some time with us. We'd love to help you customize a couple of prompts and see if we can help drive better decisions. The second thing that we are offering right now is something that we're calling an AI audit. And Taylor, will you kind of walk through what this AI audit is?
Yeah, we're now starting to use our product to help companies, especially leadership, assess the capabilities and the AI readiness. I think a big inhibitor for companies to move on this wave is not just a matter of finding the right tech. It's the confluence of tech, people / change management, and operations. And it's an opportunity to rethink how business is conducted, how information flows. And so we want to help our customers especially make sense of this and help the leadership team also get aligned around what the biggest opportunities might be, the high impact wins to deploy this tech in a safe and secure way. And the goal for us is to help you build and drive a roadmap that you can take forward throughout the rest of the year. Undoubtedly, things will change, but this is kind of how we imagine, the rest of the teams out there trying to up level and upskill and lean into this wave in a very real way.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you to Clara. Our email addresses are here. We'll send you a follow-up email. Thank you to Deco for hosting this and her evening, her time. Thank you for everybody who showed up. And yeah, we'd love to stay in touch. And thanks again, Clara.
Yeah. And Lawrence,
so
there's a few questions. Oh, go ahead, Deco. Sorry.
No, sorry. Please go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, no, I was going to pick out, there's been quite a few questions
let's
in
do
the
some
chat.
questions. We've got a few minutes. That's a good call.
We have some time. Yeah. So let me
Thank
scroll
you.
up. Let's see. Sahil asked, how do you think Ambient adapts to the uncertainty on unstructured environments for chiefs of staff in startups? Larger codes tend to have more structure to the information, while that might not be the case in startups. So how does Ambient evolve or adapt to different kind of levels of organization?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I mean, the way we did it is we did, I think, 300 or 400 interviews, and I see a lot of names on this call that we actually interviewed. And the thing about the chief of staff role, it can vary from stage to stage. It can vary from principal to principal. Like, I know a company that has 57 chiefs of staff, and same company, every role looks a little bit different. And so the way we did it was do a lot of interviews and try and distill things down to the commonalities across all companies, all stages. And we landed on things like rhythm of business. We landed on things on strategic projects, strategic recruiting, and then strategic planning. Those are the four. And then briefing and insights, which is sort of an overlay across the top. That's where we landed. But you're right. A lot of people on the call right now are doing things that are other than those things. And we do not yet have product for you.
Nice. Aaron Goff asked, we're trying to set up an internal knowledge base of resources to answer questions from our team on how things work internally. What would you recommend? What's the best tool for that? Notebook LM?
Yeah. So we have customers that are actively using Notebook LM. So we have a customer that is doing a customer listening tour right now, where he's going out and he's using, I think, Gemini to record all these interviews with customers. And it's about trying to figure out what features to build. This is a CEO, by the way, not a chief of staff. And they are moving over to Ambient just for security reasons. But I think Notebook LM can fill that need very well. What I like about Notebook LM is you can also ground it in documents. You can upload documents and files. That's something that we're probably going to copy at Ambient because we really like that kind of full context. So that is one way. We have another customer, like, the short answer is there's nothing off the shelf. Like, I think Ambient is heading that direction. We have another customer whose CTO has taken all of their Otter recordings, thousands of them, over multiple years, and has built a RAG on top of that that is meant to sort of enable that ask any question across everything. Now, that is technically still a very hard problem. Google Notebook LM limits you, I think, to 50 artifacts, and that's Google, right? Google has a hard time looking across everything and being confident that the AI is looking at the right neighborhood of information. So the short answer is there's no easy way. There are some insecure ways that are probably fairly effective, like Notebook LM. And then there's companies like us that are trying to get there kind of chunk by chunk, piece by piece. But all this points to your company needs a librarian, because somebody still needs to organize this data in digestible neighborhoods that the AI can make sense of. Sorry for the long answer there, but that is the billion-dollar question. Is the company that can figures that out. There's also companies like Glean, which are more in the enterprise search. It's more of a search and index metaphor, where they index all of your systems of record and try and expose it to a search box. Very powerful stuff. It's not really AI native. It's more kind of search metaphor. But yeah, a lot of folks are trying to get to that. Great question.
Nice. Yeah. Last one. Rebecca Miller asks, how do you personally best determine which tool is the right one for the job? I can take that one if you want.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Oh man, a lot of time testing, a lot of time, and this is something that we spend, as you can tell, a lot of time just when new things drop, we tend to drop what we're doing to get our heads wrapped around what does this mean? How does it work? How does this work with the other tools? Does this replace what we were doing before? For us, when it comes time to actually put something in production into customers' hands, we need it to be reliable, secure, and consistent. So we have a very high bar for what makes it to production. We demoed an interesting product in Operator, and it's using some very new models. Many of those models are accessible today if we wanted to put it in the product, but they don't meet that threshold of reliable, secure, and consistent. And so that's how we kind of assess when we start to get new tools in front of us. We start to test it and just see how does it compare to what we're doing today. And if we can't get there on the conviction, we're not going to put it out into the world. But you can bet that we are using those internally where the risks are much lower.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I'm for email right now. I'm back and forth between Fixer FYXER, which is a cool, like little kind of AI powered sorting, with Superhuman, which is sort of the OG in terms of premium email experience, to Gmail itself, which is getting better with Gemini embedded into it. And I don't know yet which one is going to win for my needs. But you just gotta carve out time to play with the tools.
Cool. I think we'll cap it there.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Deepa.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Claire.
very much, Lawrence and Taylor, for your time and for sharing your knowledge. This was amazing. Thank you, everybody, for joining as well. Good to see you.